Good morning. Great morning. Wonderful morning. Spectacular morning. Outstanding morning. Magnificent morning. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious morning. Yes. Again, as usual, with the beginning of every one of these calls, the reminder that we get to choose. You get to choose. I get to choose. We all get to choose how we're going to think. Remember, it's not you become what you think about most of the time. It should become how you're thinking most of the time. That subtle change of language and the use of it makes all the difference in the world. See how you're thinking, what meanings you give things, the choices you make about the processes in your mind. See, that's what gets manifested in your world. Think about that. It's the emotion that's tied to what's happening. That's what you manifest. You don't manifest the goal card. You don't manifest the vision board. You don't manifest the affirmation. You manifest how you feel about those things. If you're looking at, for instance, your goal card is something that, oh, I want that you're going to try to do, that you're going to attempt, I got news for you. It's not going to take place in your outer world. So you've got to lock into it. You got to become one with the idea. You've got to give meaning to this. And from that deep meaning, from that connection, by entering into the spirit of that idea, it will then give you life. Why? Because it's alive. You've shown that you've made it important. You can look at it quite simply this way. It's really all about the law of love. I know Bob Proctor talked about the law of vibration, but really, vibration is dependent on love. What you love, what you're connected to, what you're giving life to, that's what materializes. And the sooner you grab onto that, oh my gosh, the sooner you'll be living your life the way that you would desire to be. But remember, though, guess who has to do that? It's you. And that's what we remind you of here in these beautiful calls in Master Your Mind. Now, what we've been studying is this wonderful masterpiece, The Master Key System by Charles Haanel. And I highly recommend that you do get a copy of this book and also highlight it, underline it. If you want this exact copy, just click on the link that we provide you to go get it and then dive into this with us and read along. But most importantly, use it. Remember, knowledge is not power. A lot of you, a lot of us, many of us have been conditioned to believe that knowledge is power. It's not. Knowledge is static energy. See, it needs to be dynamic in order for it to have power in your life. And the only way that knowledge has power in your life is if it's moving in you, as if you're using it, which is why we close every one of our calls with asking, what's the golden rule? And that golden rule is application, baby. That's what it is. You've got to use it. So use it. All right, so let's dive into this, shall we? Let's go into where we are in this beautiful masterpiece. Now, here we are on page 268, and we went over this in the last session, but we're going to go over it again because it's really important. Now, what does Charles Haanel say? He says, the vibratory activities of the planetary universe are governed by the law of periodicity. Everything that lives has periods of birth, growth, fruition, and decline. These periods are governed by septimal law. Now, in terms of this periodicity, what you're going to find is what he's really talking about is the law of gender. Bob Proctor talked about this quite a bit. The law of gender, which means that everything has a gestation period. Now, in terms of the gestation period for you, it's important that you recognize and understand that as you set this goal, you need to make the best educated guess you can, but you don't know what the gestation period is for this for you. You can, however, speed up the process from what you understand by locking into it. But that doesn't mean that it goes against how long it does need to gestate. Now, here he has septimal law, where he's talking about how there's a period of sevens and how we can tie it into the 7 days of the week. Now, with this being said, what does he say? The law of sevens governs the days of the week, the phases of the moon, the harmonies of sound, light, heat, electricity, magnetism, atomic structure. It governs the life of individuals and nations and dominates the activity of the commercial world. Now, this is everywhere, in everything. Okay, the law of gender, it governs everything. Now, where we left off from the last session was this specific statement. Life is growth, and growth is change. Now, underline that. Type that in the comments. Life is growth, and growth is change. Now, as we dive into this change, and as we dive deep into this law of sevens, as Charles Haanel is going to point this out, it's very important that you don't take it literally. Okay, because he's going to start talking about these 7 years sessions that are here. But keep in mind, what he's doing is he's sharing a rhythm. And this rhythm is not necessarily going to be based from these 7 years that he's pointing out. So again, it's very important that you gain that and understand that it's a rhythm that you can consciously step into at any moment. You're not late, you're right on time. And you'll understand why I'm saying this to you in just a few moments. So each 7 years period takes us on a new cycle. So he's talking about our life cycle. The first 7 years is a period of infancy. The next 7 years, a period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. The next 7 represents the period of adolescence. The fourth period marks the attainment of full growth. The fifth period is the constructive period, when men begin to acquire property, possessions, home, and family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes, and this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of sevens beginning with the 15th year. Now notice how he's talking about the 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, right? And you're moving forward, and maybe you get up to 49, or maybe then after that you get up to 56, or whatever that is. But again, the emphasis here is not so much about the years as it is the cycle. Now, what's beautiful is, for instance, if you're in your older years, remember, he's talking about a rhythm. And when you are older, guess what you have? You have experience, which means you can condense the cycle for gestation for an idea. Now, again, it's really important for you to get this, because if you read this on the surface and you just looked at it, if you're, for instance, in your beautiful years, 50s, 60s, or whatever, you can look at this going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But no, it's not true. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about a rhythm that's here. And there's always a rhythm. There's always a law of gestation. So now let's go even further. There are many who think that the world is just about to pass out of the 6th period, that it will soon enter the 7th period, the period of readjustment, reconstruction, and harmony, the period which is frequently referred to as the millennium. Now, again, really think about how this ties into everything when it comes to change. There's always that cycle from when you're born, or from when the idea is born, to its fruition. Whatever's planted is what's reaped. With that being said, there's still that gestation period. There's still the law of gender in play. Now, here he's speaking of the millennium. This is a big thing that's talked about in the Bible. But what's interesting when you dive into it, it's really talking about the life of man. It's talking about this millennium as something that happens in us as we go through our experiences. Now, with that, we'll go further into what he's saying here. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principles outlined in the master key. With the full assistance of that higher law, with that full assistance, that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding of conscious operation of spiritual laws, we can convert every seeming difficulty into a blessing. See, this is where he's going here. Okay, there's always a gestation period that you go through. There's always this discomfort as you're going through change that's going to happen. The question is not about whether or not it's going to happen, it's how are you going to look at it? How are you going to experience it? What are you going to make it mean? Isn't that interesting? See, because this is where you got to really get that you're the one who has that choice. You always have a choice. Now, before we go any further, for those of you who are watching the first 10 minutes of this call, live streaming on the other social platforms, if you'd love to join us here for completion with regards to the session, then just go to elevitality.com and register so you can participate in this.